There is currently a Venezuelan occupation of Guyanese soil, and nothing is being done to stop it. No, I'm not talking about that Spanish lady that moved in next door to you. Don't be ignorant. I am talking about a military invasion and occupation of Guyanese territory, one that started only months after Guyana gained its independence from England. This is the story of the Venezuelan incursion of Ankoko Island. Greetings and welcome to another episode of For the Culture Guyana. At the risk of starting an online flame war, today we are talking about the little-known incursion of Ankoko Island. But before we get to that, be sure to share our video and subscribe to For the Culture Guyana for more great content. Our story begins in February 1966. The governments of Venezuela, the United Kingdom, and Guyana signed a document known as the Geneva Agreement. The intention was to resolve the controversy over the Venezuelan claim that the arbitral award of 1899 was null and void. The agreement said, quote, "No new claim or enlargement of an existing claim to territorial sovereignty in these territories of Venezuela and British Guiana shall be asserted while this agreement is in force, nor shall any claim whatsoever be asserted otherwise than in the mixed commission while that commission is in being." End quote. To give you some context, there was a long-standing border dispute between Venezuela and Guyana that was inherited from the European powers that colonized the two. However, the history behind this conflict is a long and complex one. Actually far too long and complex for this video, so we'll chronicle that in a multi-part series later. But just understand that this agreement in 1966 was supposed to be the one that ended it all. It didn't. In May of 1966, Guyana gained its independence from England. However, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows as there was trouble afoot. For the most part, the recognized border between the two countries was pretty standard as for borders go. Snake through this valley, wind through this river, run through this empty space, you get the idea. However, when the border meets the confluence of the Cuyuni and the Wenamu rivers, it actually cuts an island in half. Yes, Guyana has many islands, not just the 365 islands in the Essequibo. This particular 7-square-mile island is known as Ankoko Island, and in September of 1966, the Venezuelan army crossed the line, literally. In the early 1960s, there was a major uprising in Bolivar State. Rebel groups struck various targets and then quickly retreated into the dense rainforest. Whenever Venezuelan soldiers pursued them, the guerrillas often fled across the Cuyuni River into Guyanese territory. Being thoroughly annoyed by this repeated action, soldiers crossed onto the Guyanese side of the island and constructed a military base, an airstrip, a post office, a school, and even brought in civilian settlers to maintain a permanent presence in the area. While a civilian occupation of foreign territory is usually overlooked, a military occupation is always considered a big no-no. Due to the remote location of the island, Guyana didn't discover the movement until 6 weeks later in October. One unfortunate Guyanese miner was shot at as he approached the island. When news of the incursion reached Georgetown, Prime Minister Forbes Burnham was livid. On the morning of the 14th of October 1966, Burnham contacted the Foreign Minister of Venezuela, Ignacio Borges, and gave him a piece of his mind. He demanded the immediate withdrawal of Venezuelan troops and the dismantling of the structures on the island. He then briefed the leader of the opposition, Dr. Jagan, of the situation. Shortly after that, Burnham took to the radio to inform Guyana of what happened. He urged the public to remain calm and assured them that every step was being taken to, quote, retain our territorial sovereignty by peaceful means, end quote. And thus peace reigned throughout the land. Just kidding. This immediately triggered a loud protest in front of the Venezuelan embassy in Georgetown. Members of the PPP's Progressive Youth Organization and the PNC's Young Socialist Movement noisily made their grievances known. Then, in what is arguably the first display of racial unity in post-colonial Guyana, some of the protesters invaded the compound, ripped the Venezuelan flag from its mast, and then proceeded to burn it in the middle of Middle Street. Realizing that some hot-headed teenagers could spark a full-blown war, Burnham swallowed his pride and apologized to Venezuela for the desecration, but he still insisted that they needed to leave the island. And how did Venezuela respond? The Venezuelan foreign minister basically told Burnham where he could put his apology and his protest, saying, quote, "The island of Ankoko is Venezuelan territory in its entirety, and the Republic of Venezuela has always been in possession of it," end quote. And if Guyana has a problem with it, take it up with the members of the mixed commission created by the Geneva Agreement.
God damn!
Venezuela argued that the land always belonged to it and that Guyana inherited stolen land from the British, who used forged maps, while Guyana cited several maps jointly made by the two governments and even official documents from Bolivar's state asserting that the Venezuelan state's border runs down the middle of the island. This conflict immediately gained the attention of Uncle Sam, who was none too pleased. Burnham then believed that the U.S. would tell Venezuela to leave Ankoko Island. However, he was wrong. They merely encouraged Venezuela to just listen to Guyana's complaints and just play nice. And how did Venezuela respond? By sending a new ambassador to Guyana in 1967, and this ambassador promptly insisted that the entire island was Venezuelan territory, and they are not giving up a mountain, nor a tree, nor a river till we. According to him, Venezuelans had long been living all over the island, which became known as Ankoko because a Venezuelan woman named Anna used to sell coconuts there. He insisted that the island was not being used as a military base, rather it was going to be cleared and prepared for civilian settlement. The airstrip on the island was to enable residents to obtain food, medicine, and other supplies from the outside world. He also claimed that Guyanese and Venezuelan soldiers mixed freely, visited each other, played dominoes, and exchanged food and gifts. There was relative calm between the two sides, while Guyana continued to use diplomatic channels to resolve the issue. However, the peace was broken on February the 21st, 1970, just 2 days before Guyana proclaimed itself as a republic. Venezuelan soldiers on Ankoko celebrated by shooting bullets and mortar rounds on the Guyanese military outpost at Bang. The firing continued intermittently throughout the day. Several buildings were damaged, but there were no reports of injuries. The next day, Guyana's government called on the Venezuelan government to provide compensation for the attack. It then told the United Nations Security Council what happened. How did Venezuela's government respond? With some classic gaslighting. They denied the attack ever happened and argued that its military forces had no interest in attacking. Despite this claim, the firing reportedly continued on February the 24th, 1970. According to the Guyana Ministry of Defense, they did not return fire. 3 days later, Venezuelan President Rafael Caldera urged Guyana not to consider them as an enemy, as his country was not interested in war. He also insisted that Guyana's letter to the UN accusing Venezuela of acts of aggression was just uncalled for. In the years that followed, the Guyanese government repeatedly complained to various international bodies accusing the Venezuelan soldiers of harassing minors and sporadic attacks of provocation against the GDF outpost at Bang. Each time, the Venezuelan government responded that the accusations were false and Guyana was just trying to make them look bad. By the 1980s, the incursion of Ankoko Island began to fade into distant memory. That was until 2018, when Guyana, through the International Court of Justice, again demanded the Venezuelan army's withdrawal from Ankoko Island. In March 2020, the ICJ will hear the case of the border controversy. The fate of Ankoko Island will be one of the matters that will be argued. And that's the story of the Venezuelan incursion of Ankoko Island. If you'd like more information about the island, the conflict, and other topics mentioned, check the link to our website. There we have all the sources we used in this video. If you like this video, hit that like button and comment, not a blade of grass. Also, I want to give a big thank you to all our supporters. Without you all, we wouldn't be here. And finally, share For the Culture Guyana's videos with all your friends and family so they too can learn interesting facts about our history. Also, be sure to check us next week when we're celebrating Guyana's Republic Jubilee with a special Mashramani themed episode. Till then, thanks for watching and do it for the culture.